Let me tell you the incredible but heartbreaking story of Dale Earnhardt Sr., one of the greatest race car drivers who ever lived and whose death shocked the whole racing world. Dale Earnhardt was born on April 29, 1951, in a small town called Kannapolis in North Carolina, which was a place where lots of people worked in textile mills and where car racing was really popular. His full name was Ralph Dale Earnhardt, and he grew up in a family that was already deeply connected to racing. His dad, Ralph Lee Earnhardt, was a famous short-track race car driver who was known all over North Carolina for being one of the best drivers around. Dale's mom was Martha Coleman, and he had several brothers and sisters named Danny, Randy, Kathy, and Kay. Even though Dale grew up around race cars and loved watching his dad race, his father actually didn't want him to become a race car driver because he knew how dangerous it could be and wanted Dale to have a safer job. But Dale was absolutely determined to follow his dream of becoming a professional race car driver, and nothing was going to stop him. He was so serious about racing that he made a really big decision when he was still a teenager. He dropped out of school so he could focus completely on learning how to race and working on cars. This was a huge risk because most people need a good education to get a good job, but Dale believed so strongly in his racing dreams that he was willing to give up everything else to chase them. Dale started his professional racing career in 1975 when he was 24 years old, and his very first race was in the Winston Cup Series, which was the top level of NASCAR racing at that time. His first race was called the World 600, and it was held at Charlotte Motor Speedway in North Carolina. This race was really special because it was the longest race of the whole season, which meant it tested not just how fast drivers could go, but also how long they could keep going without getting tired or making mistakes. Starting his career in such a tough race showed everyone that Dale was serious about competing at the highest level right from the beginning. 3 years later, in 1978, Dale got his big break when he was asked to replace another driver in a race. He did so well that he finished 7th in a race called the Firecracker 400, which got a lot of people's attention and showed that he had real talent. The next year, 1979, was Dale's official rookie season, which means it was his first full year racing professionally. He joined a racing team called Rod Osterland Racing, and he had an amazing first year. He won his very first race at Bristol Motor Speedway, which is a really short track where cars race really close together and drivers have to be super careful not to crash into each other. Not only did he win that race, but he also finished 7th. Overall for the whole season, which was incredible for someone who had never raced a full season before. This great first year showed everyone that Dale Earnhardt was going to be a force to be reckoned with in NASCAR. In his second year, Dale got a new crew chief named Doug Rickert, and together they made an amazing team. A crew chief is like the coach of a race car driver. They help make decisions about how to set up the car and what strategy to use during races. Dale and Doug won several races together at famous tracks like Atlanta, Bristol, Nashville, and Charlotte. Dale's style of driving was very aggressive, which means he wasn't afraid to race really close to other cars, and he would do whatever it took to win. This made him exciting to watch, but also made other drivers a little scared of racing against him. In 1981, Dale joined a racing team called Richard Childress Racing, which would become the team he was most famous for driving with. At first, things were pretty good. He finished 7th overall that season. But then he had two really tough years where he struggled to win races, and everything seemed to go wrong. However, Dale never gave up, and his big breakthrough came when he finally won the Daytona 500, which is the most famous and important race in all of NASCAR. This victory was huge because it proved that Dale could win the biggest races, not just the smaller ones. In 1984, Dale had a fantastic season, winning 6 different races at tracks all over the country. He was getting better and better, and by 1986, he won his second Winston Cup championship, which means he was the best driver in all of NASCAR that year. He won 5 races that season and was so consistent that he set records for how often he finished in the top positions. In 1988, something really cool happened. Dale got a new sponsor called GM Goodwrench, and his race car became famous for being all black with the number 3 on it. Because of this black car, and because Dale was such a tough, intimidating driver, people started calling him the Man in Black. This nickname stuck with him for the rest of his career, and the black number 3 car became one of the most recognizable cars in all of sports. Dale won 3 races that year, and then 5 races in 1989. The 1990 season was absolutely incredible for Dale. He won 9 races during the regular season and also won his 3rd Winston Cup championship. He was dominating NASCAR and was considered one of the greatest drivers ever. In 1991, he won another championship, his 4th one, even though he only won 4 races that year. This showed that Dale was not just fast, but also very smart about racing. He knew that sometimes it's better to finish 2nd or 3rd consistently than to take big risks trying to win every single race. However, 1992 was a tough year for Dale. He only won 1 race the whole season and finished 12th overall, which was really disappointing for someone who was used to winning championships. But Dale was never one to give up, so he hired a new crew, chief named Andy Petrie, and this change made a huge difference. With Andy's help, Dale bounced back and won another championship. In 1994, Dale won his 7th and final Winston Cup championship, finishing the season with a huge lead over all the other drivers. This would be the last championship of his career, but he was still far from finished racing, even though he didn't win any more championships after 1994. Another Daytona 500, and finished 5th overall for the season. The 1996 season had some ups and downs. Dale won some races, but also had a really scary crash during a race at Talladega. The crash was so bad that he got seriously hurt, but being the tough guy he was, Dale came back the very next week to race. At Indianapolis, even though he was still hurting from his injuries, he led most of that race before his body finally couldn't take it anymore. In 1997, Dale had one of his worst seasons ever. He didn't win a single race the whole year. But just when people thought he might be getting too old to compete, he came back in 1998 and won the Daytona 500 again. This victory was extra special because he had tried so many times to win this race and had come close so many times, but couldn't quite do it. When he finally won it again, fans and other drivers were so happy for him that they came out onto the track to congratulate him. Now let's talk about Dale's personal life, which was just as eventful as his racing career. When Dale was only 17 years old, which is really young to get married, he married a girl named LaTon Brown in 1968. They had a son together named Dale Earnhardt, but being married so young and trying to build a racing career at the same time was really hard. So Dale and LaTon got divorced in 1972 after 4 years of marriage. Just 1 year after his divorce, in 1973, Dale married his second wife, Brenda. Together they had 2 children who became very important parts of Dale's legacy. They had a daughter named Kelly King and a son named Dale Earnhardt Sr., who would grow up to become one of the most popular and successful NASCAR drivers ever, just like his father. Dale Jr. inherited his dad's talent and his friendly personality, and fans loved him almost as much as they loved his dad. However, Dale's second marriage also ended in divorce. In 1982, Dale married his 3rd and final wife, Teresa Houston. Teresa was a strong and supportive partner who helped Dale through both the good times and the tough times in his career. Together, they had a daughter named Taylor Nicole, and Teresa remained married to Dale until the day he died. She was not just his wife, but also helped him manage his business affairs and was a source of strength throughout his later racing years. Now comes the saddest part of Dale Earnhardt's story, how he died and the mystery that surrounded his death for many years. On February 18, 2001, Dale was racing in the Daytona 500, the most important race of the NASCAR season. It was the last lap of the race, and Dale was running in 3rd place. His son Dale Jr. and his teammate Michael Waltrip were running 1st and 2nd. But then, something terrible happened. Dale's car got bumped by another car, which caused him to lose control. His black number 3 car slammed into the wall at almost 180 miles per hour. At first, the crash didn't look that much worse than many other crashes that drivers had walked away from. But when the safety crews got to Dale's car, they discovered that he had been killed instantly. The whole racing world was shocked and heartbroken. Dale Earnhardt, the man in black, the driver who seemed so tough and indestructible, was gone. For many years after Dale's death, people wondered exactly what had gone wrong. How could such an experienced driver who had survived so many other crashes die in what didn't look like the worst crash ever? Some people thought maybe something was wrong with his car. Others wondered if the safety equipment had failed, and some people even wondered if there was something suspicious about the whole thing. Finally, after years of investigation by experts, the full truth came out about what really happened, and unfortunately, it's not a comforting story. The investigators found out that Dale's death could have been prevented if better safety equipment had been used and if NASCAR had made safety improvements sooner. One of the biggest problems was that Dale, like many drivers of his time, didn't like wearing certain types of safety equipment because he thought it was uncomfortable or that it would slow him down. There was a special device called a Hans device, which stands for head and neck support, that could have saved his life. But it wasn't required by NASCAR at the time, and Dale chose not to wear it. When his car hit the wall, the sudden stop caused his head and neck to snap forward so violently that it caused a fatal injury called a basilar skull fracture, his life. The investigation also found that the walls at Daytona weren't designed to absorb the impact of a crash. They were just hard concrete walls that didn't give at all when a car hit them. Today, NASCAR uses special energy-absorbing barriers called safer barriers that help reduce the impact when cars crash. The cars themselves also weren't designed as safely as they could have been. The investigators found that there were many safety improvements that could have been made to protect drivers better, but NASCAR had been slow to implement them. The saddest part of all is that Dale's crash happened in a very common way. He got squeezed between two other cars, lost control, and hit the wall. This type of accident had happened many times before, and other drivers had survived similar crashes. But because of the combination of not wearing the proper safety equipment, the hard walls, and the design of the car, which should have been a survivable crash, became fatal, or an unavoidable accident. It was the result of safety measures that should have been in place but weren't. This realization made his death even more tragic because it could have been prevented. However, Dale's death did lead to major changes in NASCAR that have saved many other drivers' lives since then. NASCAR now requires all drivers to wear hands devices. They've installed safer barriers at all their tracks. They've made the cars much safer, and they've improved medical response at races. The same fate. Even though Dale Earnhardt is gone, his legacy lives on in many ways. His son Dale Jr. became one of NASCAR's most popular drivers and carried on the family tradition. To him, he's remembered not just as one of the greatest drivers ever, but also as someone who was tough, determined, and never gave up, no matter how difficult things got. Dale had some interesting sides to his personality that fans loved learning about. He was very superstitious and always wore the same lucky underwear during races. He loved animals and often rescued stray dogs. Despite being known as tough and intimidating on the track, he was actually playful and loved playing pranks on other people. He collected old cars and enjoyed fixing them up, and he was also a great cook who was famous for his barbecue recipes that he loved sharing with friends and family. Dale Earnhardt's story is one of incredible success, determination, and tragedy. But most of all, it's the story of someone who followed his dreams no matter what obstacles stood in his way.